No doubt about it. Dreamchaser is teetering on the edge of the abyss because it no longer has a launch vehicle as planned for its first launch. Who's going to save him? Well, none other than SpaceX. But it's not going to be the Falcon 9 rocket. So which one will it be? Falcon Heavy or the Starship? Let's find out in today's episode of Alpha Tech. All right, as we know, ULA was very eager to proceed with its second launch in September because this is the final step before the new rocket can be certified to perform national security missions for the DoD. Meanwhile, Sierra reportedly informed ULA it had a significant risk towards making the September launch date and that it would have to step aside so the rocket company could move ahead with its certification. In a separate statement, Sierra Space said that despite the setback, their first Dreamchaser spacecraft, named Tenacity, is still on track for its first mission before year's end. Tenacity, along with the expendable Shooting Star cargo module, completed environmental testing, a series of tests to ensure the vehicle will survive the harsh conditions of launch and orbit in early May. The spacecraft was moved to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida later that month, where they are currently undergoing final testing before launch. While the delay is a major disappointment for space enthusiasts eagerly awaiting Dreamchaser's launch, it's also a smart move by Sierra Space, as extending the testing period ensures that the efficiency and reliability of the first launch is going to be epic. They have likely also learned some lessons from the competitor Boeing with the Starliner spacecraft, realizing they cannot allow their vehicle to have any issues in space leading to failure like Starliner. Currently, Starliner's stuck in space and no specific return date back to Earth. Another reason for the separation of Dreamchaser and Vulcan could be mistaken collaboration from the start between ULA and Sierra Space. For ULA, they should not have chosen a developing vehicle as their payload. They should have understood this and needed to act quickly to get their rocket operational. Meanwhile, development of Dreamchaser is clearly slow and can't keep up with their pace. So, from Sierra Space's perspective, choosing Vulcan, an unproven rocket, was a risky move. The years of delay for Vulcan, with its first flight scheduled for January 2024, have demonstrated the risk of this decision. Both sides seem to have underestimated the complexity of syncing up their development schedules. When Vulcan's ready, the demand for its use is going to be high, while Dreamchaser might still be incomplete. Worst case scenario, Dreamchaser doesn't even launch this year. First, we have to remember that despite a busy schedule, ULA's production rate for Vulcan is not fast. On top of that, Vulcan's readiness is also tied to Blue Origin's BE-4 engine. As of now, it's July, and Cert 2 has yet to launch, so it's hard to even know when Cert 3 is going to be ready. Even the chance to launch Dreamchaser on Cert 3 is uncertain. ULA might shift that flight to a payload under the USSF's National Security Space Launch contract. Currently, Delta IV Heavy has retired, and Atlas V only has 16 missions left, all of which have been planned, mostly involving Kuiper satellite launches and Starliner launches. Therefore, Vulcan is going to be the main vehicle responsible for the USSF contract with a backlog of over 20 flights. On top of that, Vulcan has two missions, USSF 106 and 87, that need to be performed this year. The time for Phase 2 of the contract is running out, and ULA has been selected for Phase 3. All of this just reduces the opportunity for Dreamchaser to launch on Vulcan, potentially being delayed indefinitely if any other issues arise. So, now, without Vulcan, what is Dreamchaser going to do to fly? Yeah, at this point, only SpaceX can help the newest spaceplane. According to info since its launch, Sierra Space officials have always said Dreamchaser will be compatible with all launch vehicles, including Falcon 9. Quite frankly, Falcon 9 is the most frequently launched rocket of the year, with an impressive track record of reliability and steadily increasing their launch cadence. SpaceX can schedule launches within a few days and sometimes even hours, offering unparalleled flexibility. The ability to quickly turn around to meet unexpected customer demands is a significant benefit for any payload that wants to launch on schedule. Compared to other providers, SpaceX's track record is exceptional. Since the Falcon 9 flight failure back in 2015, nearly a decade of successful missions have followed. This level of reliability is a strong attraction, especially for demanding customers and critical payloads. Other launch service providers have encountered technical issues and more frequent delays, making SpaceX the reliable choice. However, as of now, Falcon 9 no longer seems suitable for Dreamchaser. With the addition of the Shooting Star module, the spaceplane's mass increases by 5.5 tons to Dreamchaser's 9-ton launch weight. Although still within Falcon 9's capabilities, Dreamchaser requires a powerful second stage and aerodynamic handling of its lifting body. This means Dreamchaser needs larger fairings like those designed by SpaceX for Falcon Heavy. Falcon Heavy is another SpaceX rocket that offers high reliability with a perfect track record, albeit with less frequent launches than Falcon 9. The robustness of Falcon Heavy for more demanding payloads provides an additional layer of assurance for partners that need those reliable launch services. If Sierra Space is not in a hurry, what they could do is wait for SpaceX's Starship to complete a couple more test flights. The world's biggest rocket, Starship, is not picky about the type of cargo it carries into space. It's really exciting to think about what's going to happen in the future. Please share your thoughts in the comments. And with that, I want to give a big shout out to Clarence, who always checks out our videos. Thank you so much for watching, brother. And everyone else, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to get the latest news videos every day. All right, getting back into it. With the assistance of the Shooting Star service module, Dreamchaser can transport up to 5,500 kilograms of pressurized and unpressurized cargo to the space station, including food, water, supplies, and scientific experiments, and then come back to Earth. Dreamchaser can return critical cargo weighing up to 1.5 tons with a gentle runway landing. Compared to the cargo missions of Dragon, which average around 1,500 kilograms of pressurized cargo, and Singus, with a higher payload of 3,700 kilos, Dreamchaser is somewhat more robust. This increased capacity is due to its separate cargo module specifically designed to hold about 3,400 kilos of waste from the ISS. The waste module will be discarded during descent and then burn up in the atmosphere. On Dreamchaser itself, it's set to handle up to 1,800 kilos of work. Additionally, designed for high reusability, this vehicle helps reduce overall costs, offering quick turnaround between missions. Its ability to launch on multiple vehicles and land on various runways makes Dreamchaser a flexible choice for reliable transportation. After leaving the space station, the Dreamchaser cargo system also provides disposal services through the Shooting Star transport vehicle. After detaching from Dreamchaser, Shooting Star safely burns up in the Earth's atmosphere. The spacecraft was initially designed as a crewed spaceplane, part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, capable of carrying up to 7 astronauts to and from the space station and other low Earth orbit destinations. Dreamchaser is 30 feet or 9 meters long, about a quarter of the total length of the space shuttle, and can carry up to 7 crew members. The crewed version of Dreamchaser shares about 85% of the cargo system, limiting fundamental changes to windows, environmental control, and life support systems. Additionally, an integrated main propulsion system provides abort capabilities and major orbital maneuvers. And last but not least, the Dreamchaser spaceplane is a multi-mission vehicle capable of supporting various LEO needs. It can be customized for both domestic and international customers through vehicle configuration, launch site, destination, landing site duration, and a ton of other variables. With its unique design and capabilities, it's sure to be favored by NASA, as it'll remind us of the shuttle era. This will certainly make the space race even more exciting. With its inherent potential, it can indeed create competition with other major players like Dragon or Starliner when it becomes operational. However, outcompeting and leading the space race is very challenging, if not impossible, for Dreamchaser right now, as SpaceX's Dragon is establishing a very dominant position. With 13 crewed flights and 30 cargo flights, Dragon's milestones are enormous, and Dreamchaser could take several years to reach that. But against another competitor like Starliner, it's entirely possible. This might be a reasonable goal for the Sierra Space team. Hopefully, they'll soon resolve the current issues and devise reasonable plans and timelines for their spaceplane, making the space race even more exciting in the coming years. Starliner is stuck in orbit after many delays, and that might be a big lesson for all new vehicles, the most prominent of which soon is Dreamchaser. However, unfortunately, after years of development, Dreamchaser not only has not yet flown into orbit, but also continues to delay its launch schedule since 2021. Why was Dreamchaser delayed, and how did NASA react to this? Will the space plane follow in the mistakes of Boeing's Starliner? The long-awaited debut of a winged space plane will have to wait a little bit longer. During a recent conference call with reporters, ULA's CEO Tory Bruno announced Sierra Space's Dreamchaser would not have its first launch this year. Why was Tory Bruno making this announcement instead of Tom Weiss, CEO of Sierra Space, who usually gives the latest updates on Dreamchaser? Well, it seems like that ULA's new Vulcan rocket's in a hurry, but Dreamchaser's not keeping up with the urgency of its partner company. Dreamchaser's been scheduled to launch on the second test flight of ULA's Vulcan rocket for the past 5 years. With Vulcan's nearly perfect inaugural flight in January, and if the second flight succeeds later this year, ULA's Vulcan will be certified by the U.S. Space Force to launch the military's most sensitive national security satellites into orbit. This is also very important for ULA since their Atlas V serving the U.S. military is no longer in production, while SpaceX has almost dominated the launch market. Meanwhile, if ULA wants to regain its position, its new Vulcan rocket needs to accelerate its launch cadence in the near future. However, Sierra Space is different. They're not chasing anyone. Their motto for developing the next generations of space shuttles is slow and steady, with dozens of tests before flight. Sierra Space has a lot of work to do to prepare the Dreamchaser spacecraft for launch. Bruno seemed quite disappointed about this. Timing's everything. We waited as long as possible on Dreamchaser because we really wanted to fly him. It's a very exciting mission. It must be said that ULA's Vulcan rocket's been heavily criticized as the biggest cause of delays related to Dreamchaser's first mission. However, currently, reality shows us that Dreamchaser is a slow-moving spacecraft project. I know Sierra Space still has a lot to do with the spaceplane to ensure its most efficient operation during the flight, but continuously slipping schedules are making me skeptical. Will Dreamchaser be able to fly by the end of this year as they promised, or will it be delayed to 2025? Let us know your predictions in the comments down below. And hey, if you like this content, please give us a like and subscribe. That keeps us motivated to pump out videos like this for you every day. Alright, so if Dreamchaser isn't launched by Vulcan, can it be launched on another rocket? Many people think that SpaceX's Falcon 9 would be a perfect choice, but in reality, that's not the case. Sierra Space's Dreamchaser is designed to be a launch vehicle agnostic. The spacecraft itself likely wouldn't require modification for different launchers, as it's the Shooting Star service module that interfaces directly with the launch vehicle. One potential issue is the fairing size of potential launch vehicles. Dreamchaser may not fit within the standard Falcon 9 fairing. While SpaceX is developing a larger fairing for Falcon Heavy, it's not currently planned for Falcon 9 and isn't reusable. Launch vehicle capability is another significant factor. Dreamchaser's too heavy for a reusable Falcon 9 launch. It requires powerful rockets like Vulcan Centaur VC-4L with 4 GEM 63XL solid rocket boosters on the Ariane 5, both of which exceed the reusable Falcon 9's capacity. NASA's requirements for the CRS-2 contract present another hurdle. The agency aims for dissimilar redundancy with multiple independent systems. This makes it unlikely that NASA would approve Dreamchaser launches on Falcon 9, as it already uses this vehicle for other missions. Looking to the future, Sierra Space has collaborated with Blue Origin on the Orbital Reef project, with renders showing Dreamchaser docked alongside Starliner. This suggests potential New Glenn launches for Dreamchaser, although the partnership has cooled recently as both companies focus on their respective projects. Several other proposed commercial space stations, both within and outside NASA's Commercial LEO Destinations program, have included Dreamchaser in their concepts, potentially opening up new opportunities. But despite its bright future, it cannot be denied that the highly anticipated spaceplane is being delayed. A long history of delays seems very familiar. Will it follow in the footsteps of Boeing's Starliner? To be honest, Sierra Space is confident enough to surpass Boeing's Starliner because the company is fully committed to its goals, unlike Boeing. Sierra Nevada Corporation's version of the vehicle was initially envisioned to carry up to 7 people to the ISS when it was competing under NASA's Commercial Crew Development programs. However, in 2014, the design was ultimately not chosen, primarily because of a lack of maturity. That's according to Aviation Week at the time. The space agency instead selected SpaceX's Crew Dragon and Boeing's CST-100 spacecraft, which are expected to make their first crewed flights as early as the second half of 2019. Sierra Nevada Corporation at the time was beginning to drop tests of the spacecraft prototype. The first glide, which took place at Edwards Air Force Base in California, performed well, save for a stuck landing gear at the end of the flight, which caused the test article to flip over upon landing. The company said the test was a success despite the gear landing issue, which was not the design that would be used for the space-rated version as it was taken from a military jet. Especially following the NASA non-selection, the company continued development, looking for supporters and organizations that might use the crewed version, including a European company in the United Nations. As a result, it was the selection of NASA of a cargo variant of the design, called the Dreamchaser Cargo System, that ultimately breathed new life into the program back in Jan 2016. Talking about Boeing's Starliner, although they announced in 2009 that the company was making a substantial investment in the development of Starliner, then known as CST-100, multiple sources shared that this was not the case. Instead, Boeing for a long time nickel and dimed the time engineers working on Starliner. This was also partly due to congressional underfunding of the Commercial Crew Program, but also because Boeing didn't want to put skin in the game. What a difference. Moreover, during the testing of Starliner, we learned about numerous issues and errors with the space capsule, which had a very familiar design in the space industry. In contrast, Dreamchaser is slow and steady. We rarely hear about unresolved issues with the spaceplane. Its airplane-like shape also provides an advantage, giving Sierra Space a legitimate reason to take additional time to develop its spaceplane. Compared to SpaceX's Dragon and Boeing's Starliner, both capsules resemble those from the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs of the 60s. Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo crews landing in capsules in the saltwater ocean were required to wait up to several hours till a rescue ship or helicopter arrived to pull them to safety. More than half the waiting astronauts got seasick with all the unavoidable pitching and bobbing in the ocean. A capsule coming to Earth on parachutes will need to land in unpopulated and relatively flat areas of the U.S. Since the parachutes have little or no maneuvering ability, it'll be a challenge to reliably avoid hazards like ravines, power lines, cabins, livestock, and barns. This needs to be done under normally windy conditions. Crews returning from orbit in a Russian Soyuz capsule landing in remote areas of Russia have to wait sometimes hours till rescue people arrive. We've seen images on Russian TV of rescue personnel struggling to pull cosmonauts out of a Soyuz capsule laying on its side. We then see rescue people placing them on stretchers for transport to recovery facilities. Experience with capsules landing on water or land has shown either method to have been relatively crude and unfriendly to crews. Astronauts I've known would be willing to ride down on a parachute if that were the only way to get assigned to a mission. But astronauts also want to touch down on a runway if that's at all possible. Dreamchaser will perform better and have lower operating costs than either of the other two capsule systems, although those differences could be small compared with the advantage Dreamchaser would have in enabling live TV coverage of the entire approach and landing of each flight. Besides, although only a quarter of the length of the space shuttle, Dreamchaser has greater carrying capacity than other spacecraft being used in NASA's commercial resupply program. Equipped with an expendable cargo module, it can carry 6 tons into low Earth orbit, enough to supply astronauts on the ISS for half a year. Almost all of those 6 tons are carried under pressurized conditions. It can also bring back 2 tons of cargo, including fragile science experiments, thanks to its modest gravity loading on re-entry and landing. There's space on board for up to 7 astronauts. Dreamchaser has become the most maneuverable new generation spaceplane. While it's taken a little while, it's still worth looking forward to. That's all for today's episode. Thanks so much for watching and see you next time.